What's up, everybody? It feels good to be back. I've missed y'all. Now let's go ahead and get into the topic of this video. Is Mass Effect better as a linear game or an open world game? As you guys could guess from the videos on my channel, I am a huge fan of Mass Effect. And a few weeks ago, there was some news about a leak that potentially revealed the next Mass Effect game's gameplay style. It appears that Mass Effect may be shying away from the open world style of Andromeda and going back to the more linear style of the trilogy. Looking at this, I started to think to myself, what Mass Effect game had the best gameplay style? And what elements would I like to see in Mass Effect 5, if that's what they're gonna call it? And I'm not talking about the combat, but more of the worlds and your interactions within them. Each Mass Effect game has certain elements that separates them from one another. The trilogy had more of a linear style, but they were different with each game. Mass Effect 1's main missions were pretty linear, but its side missions would take you to planets where they're more open world. You could explore the planets, but there wasn't much to do besides collecting minerals and MacGuffins, and fighting the occasional Thresher Maw. I hate these bastards, by the way. They're even harder in the Legendary Edition. Not to mention that the Mako was horrible in the OG version. Some of these worlds would have side missions for you to do, and most were okay. You're going to be seeing the same prefab buildings over and over, but they make sense from a world standpoint. The colony on Chaska was creepy. You had the biotic terrorists, not to mention Dr. Salion's twisted ass, and then there was killing Nasana's slaver sister. We were deceived, but her sister was a menace, so I don't feel as bad about that one. Then there's Cerberus in their primordial stage doing some crazy experiments. It's actually funny that you end up working with them later. There are also side missions aboard ships, and these were good distractions. The MSV Worthington always stuck with me, and it centers around this woman, Julia. I made a video on this mission if you're interested. The Citadel in 1 is very open, and one could argue that it might be too big as it does take some time to get around, but it's not a big deal in my opinion. If you don't feel like walking to certain areas, you could use the rapid transit hubs to go to the area that you want. However, you will have to go to each area at least once before you can transit there, but that's not too much of a deal as you're going to run into these places eventually. I do like this version of the Citadel mainly because there were interesting things to do here. For example, in one mission, you have to track down the source of a signal that's funneling money from gambling machines to a private account. You would think it's a person doing this, but it's actually an AI, and it really doesn't want to be caught. So you then have to stop it from self-destructing, from which you can get a decent amount of money if you're fast enough. You did have hub worlds on different planets like Pharos and Novaria. From these hubs, you could access main missions, but there wasn't a lot to do in these worlds. There could be some side missions, but most of the things that you did on these worlds tied into the main mission, like helping Gianna Parasini take down Annihilus on Novaria. I love seeing that smug bastard get what was coming to him.
This is an outrage. I'll see that you never work in this sector again.
Yeah, get a move on.
You, Shepard! I demand you place this bitch under arrest!
You have the right to remain silent. I wish to God you'd exercise it.
This hub setup would be fleshed out more in future games, but this was a good start. Mass Effect 2 took away the open world planet exploration in exchange for more self-contained side missions. You can reach most of these by scanning for radio transmissions from certain planets, and after you find them, you can go into those side missions that may lead to other side missions. Shepard unintentionally waged a war against the Merc groups in 2, and Aria tells us in 3 that led to a power vacuum, which led to a douchebag like Darner Voss taking over the Blue Suns. And why did I bring this up? Well, because for most of these side missions, you're going to be dealing with mercs. There are a few exceptions. For example, on Neith, you're going to be dealing with some malfunctioning mechs. Loki mechs are already pests, but in this mission, you're going to have to fight a lot of them. Not to mention you got one of the big boys here too. This mission leads into the crime scene / horror movie on Jarahi Station, where a rogue VI locks you in the place and you have to escape. And then there's swarms of Husk on Akitas. When Mass Effect decides to add horror elements, you really feel them. Hub worlds were a bit more fleshed out in 2. This game introduced hub worlds like Omega, Tachanka, and Ilium. On these planets, you have both main missions where you gather teammates and loyalty missions where you help them out. The Citadel is a bit more condensed than the one in the last game. For one, you don't have access to the full Presidium. Because of our Cerberus ties, it's best to stay away from there for now. Yeah, on the list it'll say Presidium, but all it is Anderson or Dina's office, where after talking to them once or twice, you won't really go back there. Zakera Ward is the main hub for this game, and what makes this hub so good is that some loyalty missions can be accessed from here too, Garrus and Thane have missions here, and through them, you can access more areas around the wards. Thane's especially. Not only that, but there was some interesting side missions and people on these worlds. This game gave us Arya. Enough could be said right there, but then there's Patriarch, Arya's old rival. You can play bodyguard for him. You get to meet Liara's father, Athena. I love me some Athena. And then there's Comrade Werner. He's just as crazy as ever. I should have mentioned him when I was talking about Mass Effect 1, but he's Shepard's biggest fan. Maybe a little too much so. There's Gianna on Ilium where you can help her with a case. I missed her in 3. And then there's the Krogan. There's not much that really needs to be said here. It's the Krogan, it's the Chanka, it's awesome. I would like to add that in this game, you can now transit back to the Normandy instead of having to trek back to it, which is a welcome addition. Mass Effect 2 takes what 1 did and improves a lot when it comes to the hubs. The hubs were put more to use by adding more important missions to them throughout the game instead of just the end game. Yeah, we did lose planetary exploration for a while, but the side missions were still fun, and we got some awesome new and recurring characters, and I can appreciate that. Mass Effect 3 is the most linear out of all the games. You'll notice that outside of the N7 missions, there aren't that many side quests on planets. They're mostly scanning fetch quests, which makes sense from a story perspective. The Reapers have officially arrived in 3, and have packed up most planets and solar systems, so exploration would be limited. Not to mention, Cerberus is an enemy again, and they're going crazy out in the galaxy along with being a thorn in our side. It's in the N7 side quest that you're dealing with Cerberus. You're either saving people or shutting down Cerberus labs in those. You do have some side missions where you can help out some past crewmates. The Ardat-Yashi Monastery is a place of nightmares, folks, but helping them adds to your war assets. Helping out Jack is a big one for me because if you don't save her and those kids, well... Hubs are affected as well due to the war. The Citadel is your only hub for this game. Everything is super condensed and separated by floors. You have to take the elevator this time around. I always wonder how big this hub would have been if it was more like Mass Effect 1 and 2. Most of the side missions here do help your war assets. If you let him live in Mass Effect 1, you could reach an understanding with Balak of all people, and he'll help in the final assault. Comrade Werner shows up and he's being a menace again, but this mission is interesting, from beginning to end. The original goal is fixing the sabotaged medical stations. Conrad was tricked into being a Cerberus recruiter so that the saboteur could do his thing. There were a few callbacks to Mass Effect 1 characters. Gavin Hossel from Pharos is mentioned, and Conrad has a doctorate in xenoscience. Shepard's reaction is ours, who would have thought that? There's also Jenna from Korra's Den, who helped save Shepard and Conrad from the saboteur after Conrad exposed them. They even hook up afterwards. There's so much going on, and I loved every bit of this mission. Kelly Chambers is also in the same area. You can talk to her and potentially save her before the coup happens, but if she was your girl in Mass Effect 2, you can slide over that way if you know what I mean. Also, you have a chance to talk to Athena again and reunite her with Liara. Some objectives tying to the main story like the stuff with Miranda, Oriana, and their crazy father, as well as making deals with the Terminus gangs. You can save Den Kerlak from Zaid and some mercs. Den got into some trouble with Cerberus, so they end up sending mercs after him. Zaid will clean house once Shepard is mentioned. There are rapid transit terminals, and nowadays I use them, but distance isn't much of a problem because of how condensed the Citadel is. Walking from one end of a floor to the other doesn't take that long, so they're mainly there for DLC purposes, or if you're lazy and want to get back to the Normandy faster. As I said, Mass Effect 3 is very linear and condensed, but that's okay here because it fits what's happening story-wise. But I can't help but miss the opportunity to check out other planets like I did in Mass Effects 1 and 2. Mass Effect Andromeda is the first open-world Mass Effect game where you can fully explore multiple worlds and have some things to do on those worlds. A lot of fans didn't like this game for a multitude of reasons, but the biggest complaint towards the open world is just that. It was too open, too empty. When you have to spend a lot of time driving around for MacGuffins, fighting the same enemies on huge empty maps, it becomes less fun and more of a chore. And this is a complaint I have for Eladin. This world is massive. The north side of the Sea of Ataraxia is expansive. Not to mention the remnant abyssal sand diving out there. If it hits you, you die. I'm always on edge when I go out there because I've been hit by it before. It sucks. The forward stations help, but similar to the rapid transit in Mass Effect 1, you have to go to that area at least once for the station to be available. But some of these are spread out in areas you may not travel to anyway. Now I will give the developers credit. At least they did try and put something on each world. Kadara had some side missions that I liked. For one, helping out Dr. Nakamoto in the slums and dealing with Johan and his cannibal gang. Eldon has the Krogan colony where you can pick up some missions as well. The makeshift right was good, but I was sweating buckets the whole time. There were 3 fiends in here. 3! Whose idea was this? Not to mention there are remnant architect battles that will become available once you establish outposts on certain worlds. You can also meet Zai's son Bane on Eos. I saw that last name Asani and my eyes lit up. So yeah, you can find some good missions, there's just not enough of them. Once you establish an outpost on the world, more side missions will be available to you, like the architect missions. But after you reach 100% viability on each world, unless you're trying to 100% the game or exploring, you're probably moving on to your next objective. The Nexus is your citadel for this game, and it's a pretty big place. I do like the Nexus a lot. It's a good hub world. You get to interrogate a guy who's been convicted of treason, you get to play detective against this scumbag Spender, and you get to resolve a protest in hydroponics. A lot of people want their loved ones out of stasis, and you kinda sympathize with them. Rapid transit sends you to other places of the station, such as the cryo bay, operations, and the common area. I don't have as much to say about this one, it's just a solid hub world. Main missions aren't usually accessed here like Mass Effects 1 and 2, and if there are, it's just a minor part of the overarching story. In my opinion, Andromeda had some good ideas, but the worlds were just too expansive at times. I think if developers had more time, this game could have turned out better, but simply off its world aspects, Andromeda is just average. So, after going through each one, what do I think is the best style for a Mass Effect game? Well, I think it's Mass Effect 2, but I do got a soft spot for 1. We got hub worlds that were interesting, there were things to do. The lack of open world gameplay on the side planets is a bit of a bummer, but for how Mass Effect 2 plays, it was the right direction. I think at the moment, Mass Effect is a game that's better with a linear style, but with open world elements. Yeah, you can have some distractions, but it shouldn't be too open-ended. The plot should take priority first. If you're going to add open world elements, or heck, just make an open world game, you have to make it worth the exploration. Mass Effect 1 Citadel was huge, and I think an idea for Mass Effect 5 or whatever it's called could be having this huge open world divided into different sections or floors, and having main, loyalty, and side missions. If you don't want to walk around the place, rapid transit, so maybe you could have the embassies, the Presidium, and maybe Huerta Hospital on one floor, Zakera Ward, Purgatory, and C-Sec on another floor, and maybe the docks beneath that. That should be enough to work with. And for the planets, if we are going back to the Milky Way, could we see Parnak, Kaje, or Rakana so we can see the Yogg, Hanar, and what's left of the Drell? That would be nice. This is all just brainstorming though, but what do y'all think of these ideas? All in all, whatever direction BioWare decides to go with the next Mass Effect game, I'm going to be ready to experience it. But I wanted to give my thoughts on what style I think fits Mass Effect better, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. I hope I conveyed my points well enough. This is all just my opinion. What do y'all want to see in the next Mass Effect game? Feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.
DJ Sonic 3.